First of all, I would like to thank the steering committee of annual symposium for allowing me to do this presentation, even though I'm not in Sri Lanka at the moment. Today my topic is linguistic features of spoken personal narratives and picture stories. Now, as we all know, in English language teaching, we use storytelling to enhance language learning. As Koki mentions, storytelling can be used to improve the linguistic diversity of language use. Now, in this case, we use different types of stories, such as personal stories, folk tales, and fairy tales. And you must have also seen that in English language teaching, instead of these original stories, we use picture stories to introduce these narrative elements. So the main focus of this study was to analyze whether picture stories are a good alternative to teach these narrative elements. Moving on to literature. According to literature, there are 5 main linguistic features in any narrative. Those are structure, personal evaluation and involvement, key settings, background, and grammar. The study was focused on these 5 main linguistic features. Now, first is structure. According to Labov and Walensky, there are 6 parts in any narrative structure. Those are abstract, which is kind of an introduction that the narrator gives at the beginning of the story or the narration, and then orientation, that is the narrator describes the setting, the characters and the place, and then complicating action. Evaluation means the narrator gives his or her own opinion of what happened, and then results or resolution, and finally comes coda, which means a kind of a conclusion or a summary of what happened. Now, there aren't much research done on picture stories or the use of picture stories in English language teaching, but Dickert has done a study on picture stories. According to his observations, the picture stories have a different structure. According to that structure, first comes the identification of settings, which is similar to orientation in the previous structure. Then identification of problem object, creation of problem state, transition of problem state to goal state, and achievement of goal state or resolution, which is again similar to results in the first structure described. And when you compare the 2 structures, you can see that abstract and coda are missing in the picture story. The second feature is personal involvement and evaluation. According to Labov and Walensky, personal evaluation means the characters or the incidents are evaluated by the narrator based on his or her own experience. And research has also found out that personal evaluation is related to the background knowledge of the narrator and also his or her own viewpoint and attitudes towards the characters and the incidents. The third element is key settings, and according to Crystal and Devi, in any narrative there's a common use of conjunctions such as after, so, but, and when, and the most common conjunction used is and. Background. Tavakoli and Foster distinguished foreground and background, and according to them, foreground is the essential information such as the number of characters involved in the story, the settings and what happened, and background means a comment on the foreground. For example, if the narrator involves in the story, he or she gives more information of the characters such as age and their jobs. Likewise, the narrator gives more information and elaborate the narration. And they have also found out that stories with more background information are complex and elaborative. The last feature is grammar. Now, when it comes to grammar, in narratives there are a lot of grammatical elements that we can discuss, but in research the main finding was that there was less use of third person pronouns in narratives, but again in Dickert story, he has identified more use of third person pronouns in picture stories. But in none of these research, the use of tenses was discussed. But in the present research, I'm going to discuss how tenses are used in these two types of narratives. Moving on to methodology, this is a case study. There were two participants, a speaker and a listener. The speaker was a university student, a native Iranian speaker with an IELTS score of 6.5, and the listener was also a university student, a native Chinese speaker with an IELTS score of 6.5. The instruments used were the narrator was asked to narrate a personal experience, and then she narrated a trip, and then you can see the series of pictures used as the picture story. The narrator was asked to describe the story in these pictures. The procedure, then first the narrator was asked to narrate the personal experience, and then she was given the set of pictures to narrate the story in the pictures. Before each narration, she was given 2 minutes preparation time, and the listener was asked to respond by asking questions or commenting. This was done because when we narrate a story, when we tell a story to someone, we have a purpose to tell the story. So I wanted to give a purpose for the speaker to tell her story. So that's why the listener was used. And then both narratives were audio recorded and transcribed twice with an interval of 3 weeks, and the intra-rate reliability was 99%. Results and discussion. I will discuss the results based on the 5 linguistic features that I discussed. First is the structure. What happened in the personal narrative? As I discussed, there was a clear abstract. The narrator started her narration by saying, I want to say about my trip. And then there was a series of events sequenced from what happened first to last. And there was not a particular tense situation, so there wasn't a particular result stage, but in the result stage, the narrator explained what happened at the end by saying after that it was time for going back. And then came the coda, where she summarized by saying it was the Skipton trip. Then in the picture story, first the narrator, in the first 2 pictures, the narrator described the problem objects, the main objects in the pictures, and in the 3rd picture she introduced the problem character and identified the problem and created the problem stage. And then in pictures 4 and 5, the narrator transited the problem state to the goal state by saying they are successful. And finally, in the last picture, achievement of the goal, they could have their babies. So as I discussed earlier, in the picture story, both the abstract and the coda are missing. Then personal involvement and evaluation of the narrator. In the personal narrative, first person singular pronoun I dominated. There were 17 occasions of adjective use such as beautiful, colorful, good, bad, and 6 adverbs such as fortunately were used. But in the picture story, third person singular pronoun she, he dominated. There were 8 occasions of adjective use, but the adjectives used were comparative adjectives, like she compared the size of the characters. This bird is bigger than that bird. Likewise, the use of adjectives were mainly comparative adjectives, and no adverbs were used. So again, when comparing, you can see in the personal narrative there was more personal involvement than in the picture story. In key settings, in the personal narrative, the narrator introduced key settings by using words such as after, then, after that. But in the picture story, she used first picture, second picture, third, fourth, likewise to introduce the key settings. But in both stories, and was the most commonly used conjunction. Background. In the personal narrative, more background information was given at the beginning, such as the place, time, what happened and who involved, and then she elaborated the foreground with background information throughout the story. But in the picture story, only the characters and the settings which were visible to her were described at the beginning and throughout the story, and there were only foreground information. I couldn't see any background information. Grammar, as I told you, my main focus was on tenses. In the personal narrative, past simple and past progressive tenses were used, but in the picture story, present simple and present progressive tenses were used. For example, in the personal narrative, she said things like, we went, when I was at the church, and then in the picture story, she said, there are two birds, the snake is going up. So, you can see the difference in the use of tenses in both types of narratives. Now, what are the pedagogical implications? The first thing is, picture stories may not be suitable to practice grammatical features such as past tenses, which we often do. I can give you an example. In Module 10 of the new Cutting Edge Pre-Intermediate 2005 textbook, picture stories are used to teach simple past tense, but according to the findings of my study, the students may not use past tenses when describing stories in pictures. The second one is, picture stories might not be suitable for speaking activities which are aimed at increasing oral language complexity. As I discussed earlier, there's less use of background information in picture stories, so students might not use lot of language to explain background information in picture stories, so the complexity can be less. And the third one is, picture stories might be suitable to provide practice on natural use of adjectives, adverbs and conjunctions, because you saw what the narrator used in picture stories are different from a normal natural narration. And the last one is, learners might need extra support in doing picture stories because less background information is available in them. So the teachers might need to pay more attention to giving more information when students are doing picture stories. To conclude, I would like to say that according to my research, spoken personal narratives and picture stories contain different linguistic features. Therefore, teachers have to be aware of them when designing pedagogical tasks. They have to think whether the picture stories will be able to teach what they really want to teach, especially the narrative elements. Finally, I would like to mention one limitation of the study. This is a case study, so if the results are to be validated, I need to use more participants and to see whether I can obtain the same results. Thank you very much for listening.